right, ready to dive into some new research?
Sounds good to me.
This paper caught my eye about malignant hyperthermia in dogs.
Oh, yeah, MMH.
Sadly, it focuses on 2 cases where the dogs didn't survive routine surgeries.
Always tough to read about.
But what I found really interesting is how they used some advanced genetic analysis to get to the bottom of what happened.
Yeah, next-generation sequencing.
So they were looking beyond the symptoms and right down to the genes.
Exactly. They were able to identify specific genetic variants that could be responsible.
Okay, so before we get too deep into that, for those who might not be familiar, can you explain what exactly malignant hyperthermia is?
Sure, MH is this rare condition, but it's life-threatening and it's triggered by certain anesthetics.
So something that should be routine can become very dangerous very quickly.
Yeah, it causes a super rapid increase in body temperature, the muscles get rigid, and a bunch of other really serious symptoms happen.
It sounds terrifying, honestly.
It is, especially during something like a routine spay or neuter.
Can you walk us through the 2 cases in the paper?
Absolutely. So the first one was a 7-year-old pit bull mix.
Right.
He was having an MRI, and he had actually been anesthetized before with no problems using sevoflurane. This time they used isoflurane, and he developed all the classic MH symptoms.
Yeah.
And then the second case was a 12-month-old golden retriever.
Okay.
Totally healthy and for a neuter and a dental.
Routine stuff.
Totally. But he also had this super rapid onset of MH symptoms.
During the procedure.
Yeah, unfortunately.
So both dogs had these extreme reactions with no history of problems, and that's where the genetic analysis comes in, right?
Exactly. The researchers really wanted to see if there was something in their DNA that could explain why they reacted this way.
Makes sense.
And they found something pretty interesting in a gene called RYR1.
RYR1.
Yep. And it's really important for muscle function.
Oh, so?
Well, it makes a protein that controls calcium release in the muscle cells. And what they found in these dogs were variants in this gene, changes that they'd never seen before.
So could these variants, these changes in the RYR1 gene, actually be the reason the dogs had such severe reactions?
That's what the researchers believe. They think these variants made the protein super sensitive to those anesthetic agents.
But how do they know for sure that these variants are the problem? Aren't there lots of variations in genes?
That's true. Not all variations are harmful, so they used 4 different methods to check just how likely these variants were to actually cause disease.
To confirm their pathogenicity.
Right. So first, they used this computer program called Polyphon-2.
Okay.
And this program can actually analyze the structure of a protein and predict if a variant will mess with its function.
Pretty cool.
And it predicted that these variants would be damaging.
So the computer analysis suggested these variants were a problem? What else did they do?
Well, they looked at the evolutionary history of this RYR1 gene too. Turns out the amino acids affected by these variants are highly conserved across a ton of different vertebrate species.
What does highly conserved mean?
It means they've basically stayed the same throughout evolution, which usually means they're crucial for the protein to work, right?
Ah, got it.
So messing with them could have serious consequences.
Yeah, changing something that's remained the same for millions of years probably isn't a good idea.
Exactly.
So they had the computer analysis and the evolutionary history, anything else?
Yeah, they compared these variants to known MH-causing variants in humans. They were very similar, located in almost the same regions of the gene.
That's got to be significant.
It is, and finally they checked these variants against a database of over 3,000 other dogs.
Yeah.
They weren't there.
Naming.
These variants were super rare.
Wow, so the computer analysis, the evolutionary history, the comparison to human MH, and the rarity of the variants all point to these genetic changes as the problem in these cases.
It really does seem that way, but here's where things get even more interesting.
Tell me more.
In the case of the golden retriever puppy, they tested his parents, and neither of them had this RYR1 variant.
Wait, if the parents didn't have it, where did it come from?
That's the burning question. It seems like it was a de novo mutation.
De novo.
It means the mutation happens spontaneously, not inherited from the parents, either in one of the parents' germ cells or very early on in the puppy's development.
So basically a random genetic event.
Essentially, yeah, just a spontaneous change in the DNA.
That is a twist. What are the implications of that?
Well, if it can happen out of nowhere, it makes predicting MH so much harder, especially for breeders.
Even with genetic testing.
Even then, there's still that chance that a puppy could develop MH because of one of these de novo mutations.
So even with testing, there's no guarantee.
Unfortunately not.
This research is really shedding light on how unpredictable MH can be.
Yeah, and that makes it even more important to understand anything that might increase the risk.
Right, and I noticed the study looked at breed and sex trends in canine MH cases.
Yep, they wanted to see if there were any patterns.
Did they find any particular breeds that seemed more susceptible?
Actually, no, it doesn't seem like any one breed is predisposed.
Interesting.
But out of the 11 cases they looked at, 10 were male dogs.
10 out of 11. That's a pretty big difference.
It is, and it actually mirrors what we see in humans.
So men are more likely to develop MH, too.
Yep, but we don't really know why yet.
That's the crux of the matter, isn't it?
Yeah.
What's the difference between the sexes?
Yeah, it's a big question that researchers are still trying to answer.
Hormones, maybe?
Could be, but we need more research to figure out what's really going on.
So even though there's no clear breed link, if you have a male dog, it's something to be extra aware of.
Definitely. And this research really highlights how important genetic testing can be.
Especially if you know there's a family history.
Exactly. It's not a routine test yet. But if there's a risk, it's worth discussing with your vet.
Early detection could make all the difference.
Yeah, but even with testing, there's always a chance, with those de novo mutations.
So being vigilant during any procedure with anesthesia is crucial.
Absolutely.
What should owners be looking out for?
Well, classic MH signs are a rapid increase in temperature, the muscles get really rigid, and their heart rate goes up.
And if you see those signs,
It's an emergency. The vet needs to know immediately so they can start treatment.
what kind of treatment?
There's a medication called dantrolene. It's a muscle relaxant that can literally be a lifesaver in these cases.
So the faster you act, the better.
Exactly. The sooner they get dantrolene, the better their chances are.
It sounds like this research is really pushing for a more proactive approach, both with genetic testing and just being super observant during any procedures.
Yeah, and communication is key. Talk to your vet about any concerns you have.
We've talked a lot about the implications for dogs, but could this research help us understand MH in humans better too?
That's the exciting part. By studying MH in dogs, we can learn things that might apply to humans as well.
So something discovered in vet med could lead to breakthroughs in human medicine.
Exactly. These two cases are a big step forward for understanding MH in dogs, but they could also change how we diagnose, treat, and even prevent MH in people.
It really shows how connected we all are, human health, animal health.
One health, right?
Yeah, exactly.
What seems like a very specific veterinary finding can actually have a much wider impact.
Absolutely. It just shows how important research is across the board.
Couldn't agree more, and there's still so much we don't know about MH.
Like why males seem to be more at risk.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Is there any research going on that you're particularly excited about that might shed some light on that?
Well, there's some really cool research being done on microRNAs.
MicroRNAs.
Yeah, they're these tiny molecules that control gene expression, and some studies suggest they could be involved in those sex differences we see in MH.
So by understanding how those microRNAs work, we might be able to develop better treatments.
Potentially, yeah, or even preventative measures.
Imagine if we could identify who's at risk before they ever need anesthesia.
Right, that would be amazing.
MH wouldn't be such a scary unknown anymore.
Exactly, and I think we're moving in that direction.
With every new study, we get a little closer.
Like this one on canine MH.
This has been such an interesting deep dive.
I'm glad you think so.
It's amazing to see how much progress is being made.
It really is, but we still have a lot to learn.
Definitely.
Well, thanks for having me. It's always great to talk about this stuff.
Thanks for joining me. It's been a pleasure.
Anytime.
From Vet Neurojar, keep those minds inspired, hearts light, and tails wagging.